the Word of God is something that is incredibly reverent, and
Mm.
we need to understand this is what God left us, and we have a responsibility to know it as much as we possibly can
Cherish it.
and
Yeah.
cherish it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of lost that.
It's been a while
Yeah.
since you've done your opening. You think you can remember it?
I practiced it on the way here. All right, here we go.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay.
Yeah. Welcome to another issue or another episode.
Another issue?
Yeah,
You
right.
have
We'll
issues.
one of
Yeah, here we
those
go.
too, yeah.
Of resisting pretense, where we have honest conversations about a life of faith in modern culture. How'd I do? Good.
Right on.
Remembered the whole thing.
Yeah, well done.
And we hope that it inspires faith-infused conversations in your life. So we have a guest today, a long-time friend and coworker for me, John McMurran. We worked. How many years did we work together?
Well, let me see. You
Like
came here
15?
in 95, right?
96, yeah.
96, and I left in 2013, so
All right.
Yeah.
So over 15 years.
over 15
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
And the three of us worked together for a brief period of time and a few years, and so this is a nice kind of it's a Stone Ridge staff reunion.
There you go.
In some ways, that's true.
In some ways, it
That's
is,
true. Yeah.
so, we're calling this episode. Actually, we're starting a series today. I think is this our first series?
It's our first series.
It's our very
Oh,
first
wow.
series.
Yeah.
We're calling it Back in My Day,
Ah.
or we
My
haven't
back,
decided.
my back is way further than your
Yeah.
back. So
It's either Back in My Day or it's Okay Boomer. We haven't decided which is the title. But John, why don't you kick us off with a little bit of your faith story, your background,
yeah.
for context for people that maybe haven't met you.
Hang on a second, John, because he's like jonesing over here to open his
Oh,
unofficially sponsored.
We are unofficially sponsored by Diet Coke, and I love to include this sound. There we go.
Blow it all over the
podcast.
microphone. Yeah. Supposed to shake it up first.
That's when we do our last podcast. We'll do a celebration that way. Now you can ask the question.
All right, your faith story, John.
Well, I grew up in a Baptist church in Bend, Oregon. First Baptist
Holy
Church.
Land.
The Holy Land,
right.
yeah, absolutely. And it was a very traditional church. I mean, at that time, and almost all churches at that time were pretty traditional churches.
Mm-hmm.
But at the age of about 13 years old, I gave my life to the Lord, and it was a real thing. I mean, I really felt like there was a complete conversion there and giving my life to the Lord. I was baptized shortly after that at First Baptist Church. But
That's the downtown.
Yeah, which isn't First Baptist Church
it's
anymore.
changed.
Yeah,
Changed names,
my
so-
wife and I actually went there and
did you?
attended there just because we were married in that church
Oh,
too.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, I grew up there under a pastor who had been there for many, many years and gave my life to the Lord. But as in many cases, I decided that I wanted to be a rebellious teenager after that. And so my life kind of fell away. I mean, quite a ways away. And I got in trouble, did all sorts of bad things. But in I'm trying to get the exact year, 1971, my wife, or I was actually in the military at that time. And I received orders to go to Korea. And I was stationed at a base in Daejeon, Korea. And in Daejeon at that time, there was a Southern Baptist mission there, an actual mission compound where the missionaries lived that went out through all of Korea. And somehow, some way, we fell in with this group of missionaries from the Southern Baptist missionary there and become very fast friends. There was a couple guys in my barracks that were really on fire Christian guys. And at that particular time, it was either go one way or go the other. And it was a decision that I had to make. And I chose to align myself with these two devout Christian guys. And we began to just do all sorts of things in in the country of Daejeon, or in the country of Korea. And it was a real unique experience. And shortly after that, I found out that it was possible that my wife could actually come over and live on the economy in Korea.
Oh, wow.
And so I lived actually a downtown Daejeon, Korea with my wife. And she was not a Christian. When my wife and I got married, I can remember the pastor at First Baptist Church at that time quizzing my wife about her relationship with the Lord, and my wife had no clue. But while we were in Korea, we again aligned ourselves with this mission compound, this Southern Baptist Mission Compound. And through all of that, my wife gave her life to the Lord. She actually became a Christian in Daejeon, Korea. And at that time, I had rededicated my life completely, and our lives were changed completely.
Wow.
I mean, the direction of our lives just took a 180, and when we began to see the importance of just serving the Lord in our lives. And we came back from there, from Korea, and aligned ourselves with another church in Seaside, California, which is where I met one of the guys that you'll all meet here in a few weeks, a guy named Sam Norris. And we became friends then too. But it was a kind of a long journey in my life to where I got to the place where I realized just how important Jesus was in my life, and I wanted to serve him with all my life.
So from that pivotal moment in the early 70s till now is 53 years.
Yeah.
Which I know because I was born in 71. So that was an easy one.
Yeah. So was my son.
Yeah, that's right. And so 53 years of, and plus change from childhood, of being engaged in faith life, in church life. What have you seen change in the church during those 53 years?
Yeah, I was kind of, well, I got a list of these questions, by the way, because I'm too old to remember anything, and so they gave them to me. But
now you can't remember the answers.
I can't remember, no. But I can remember going, I mean, it was my family was, my dad was, my stepdad at that time was not a church-going guy, but my mother tried to do the best she could. But every Sunday we would get dressed up in our literally our dye and our shirt with the best clothes we owned.
Your Sunday best.
Sunday best.
Yeah.
And we'd get on the bus and we'd go to church. The bus would pick us up and we'd go to Sunday school at that time. And so it was the normal thing for everybody to get in their Sunday best before you would go and actually attend Sunday school or whatever it was. It was just the way things were at that time. And I mean, it was very seldom that you ever saw anybody that didn't have a tie at least on. It was quite normal at the time.
Right.
And so that part of the culture of the church really began to change. And I'm going to jump forward just a little bit here. I came on staff here at this church in 1991. And Sam Norris was the pastor then, and I was the associate pastor at that time. It was the normal thing for us, when I first came on staff here, for us to show up in a shirt and tie, or more likely a sport coat or something like that. And that was the normal dress for the time. And
if I remember correctly, from even when I got here, wasn't Sam kind of a fan of the three-piece suit?
He was a clothes guy.
Yeah.
Sam loved clothes. Me, not so much. But I began to see that part of culture began to change, and people became a little more free in their dress.
Yeah.
And which kind of brings a little thought to me. On that particular issue, we were talking about cultural changes and how they affect things one way or the other. And it's kind of it's a two-way street.
Sure.
It really is, because people became more comfortable as the attire for church wear. People began to feel a little more comfortable about coming to church and attending a church where they didn't have to get in full dress to do that. And so the comfort level of the church began to change people. And that was during the time when the church really kind of took on, during the Jesus movement and all of that, really began to kind of grow and bring people in. And it was a very exciting time in the life of the church. But on the other side of things, I began to see a little bit of the reverence for really who God is. And I mean, this is God we're talking about. We come here to worship a God that is the God of the universe. And I think maybe we have gotten a little too comfortable in that part of our cultural and meaning dress. And
right. I led a Bible study last week, and we were talking about fear, and it naturally kind of led to the fear of God. Like, there are good fears and bad fears, and we were talking about how does fear play into our relationship with God? Because on the one hand, He's called us friends. Yeah. He's like, I'm not even going to call you servants. I'm going to call you friends. Yeah. And that's very familiar and doesn't have a lot of fear. And on the other side, the scripture says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Yeah. And so we were playing with this almost this scale, this balance of there's familiarity and friendship with God, but there's also fear and reverence. And how do you find the right balance? It's a tough thing. Yeah.
And so that's kind of where things were beginning to transition to. And we've seen that both good and bad. So the culture of the church, but there was a lot of other changes in the culture of the church too. Yeah. The music, for one thing.
Oh, huge change.
Huge change. I mean, it was the normal thing when I was a youth, or even later than that. I mean, all the way up until I came on this staff. We sang the same songs, basically.
Yep.
Well, everybody knew, and they said, okay, open your books to hymn number 230.
Hymn number 2, yeah. Turn over in your hymnal.
Turn over to your hymnal. Yeah, right. We're going to sing the next 19 verses.
But it was the normal thing. I mean, and there was a familiarity to that, too, that was good. I mean, the church should be a place where people can come. And there's a little bit of a familiarity too. And so as the music began to change, and as we began to bring in more and more and different kinds of music, I mean, it's the normal now for almost every Sunday for us to come in and learn a new song. I mean, something that we're completely unfamiliar with. And that, again, I mean, those things, the familiarity of that part of the church has kind of gone a little bit by the wayside. My son, who is the same age as Tom, I asked him one day what he came to church for a long time when we were first Southern Baptist Church, and he said, Dad, I don't feel the tradition and familiarity. This is my son, who is not a traditional guy at all, but that part of his life, he wanted that in his life. He wanted that particular thing in his life where he could come and he could feel that familiarity of within the church.
That's interesting, because I would guess that your son is similar to me, and I'm a little bit older than Tom, but I'm kind of a cusp kid. And what I mean by that is that my parents grew up in the very traditional church, but I've experienced both the very traditional and the very modern church. And so I could see where he would say, this is not the traditional church. This is not what I grew up with. My kids, or even my grandkids for that matter, will never know what that was like.
It's true.
Because their view of the traditional church is much different than, and it's just like everything else. I mean, my grandkids, and I tell the story that we went to this 50s restaurant here in town. And so we're waiting for our food.
The diner, yeah.
Yeah, the diner, yeah. And so they look up on the wall and they see a gold record. And their comment to me was, that is the biggest CD I had ever seen. That was my kids.
Yeah.
My grandkids have no idea what a CD is. They probably have no clue.
What a CD is.
They don't know what a rotary phone is. They don't know. And so what we consider traditional is really interesting compared to what the next generation sees as traditional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Traditions change, and that's and the church has driven a lot of that, I believe, and that change. And again, good and bad, both sides come out of that. And so, but yeah, we've seen all those changes within the church too.
Yeah. What kind of changes like stand out as the big changes in our wider culture? What are the one? I mean, we could go on and on and on. Like so many things have changed, but what are the big ones to you?
I was kind of thinking about that too, and it seemed. I mean, everybody that I knew as a child would, if you would ask them the question, "Are you a Christian?" the answer would have been yes. And a lot of it was because that's what their parents were. That's what grandma and grandpa were. That's where I come from. Therefore, I must be, at least be a Christian. And so it was the normal thing for society at that particular time. And even in the 50s, I mean, the 50s were a time when God was it was kind of important to people. I mean, they would identify, if you will, with that particular type of culture of a reverence for God. And then again, things begin to change and now I don't think we see that. I want to go back one more time. I want to kind of change that a little bit. There was a little bit of, it was kind of a fake society though.
Oh, I see.
Because people might have said, this is what I am, but certainly they weren't.
It wasn't really deeply important.
It wasn't deeply important.
Kind of a surface.
It was a very surface type of.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of that goes back to what you just said, is that I grew up that way.
Yeah.
So I'm Catholic because my parents are Catholic, and but I have no relation. I mean, if you walked it, well, do you have a relationship with Jesus? Who? You know, so.
And I think it's just remarkable when I look at our young people today and I see how they have become so outspoken. I mean, we always had the few, you know, that were outspoken, but not very many. I mean, it wasn't the norm for even people who were very churched at the time to even come to school or whatever and to talk about their faith. I mean, it just wasn't. It wasn't the normal thing. And I just applaud the kids of today because it's a tough world that we live in today. And yet a lot of the young people of our world today have stepped up to the plate.
Right.
And it has become incredibly important to them that Jesus be known to the world.
I think it is in some ways, I mean, you still can be, but I think in some ways it's harder to be a nominal Christian. As the culture kind of becomes more polarized about it, to say you're a Christian kind of like puts you out of norm to an extent that people, so you kind of have to embrace that or not claim it. In many ways.
You can't really be much of a fence rider today.
I mean, it's hard. It's certainly harder to be a fence rider.
Be a fence rider today than it was then.
Yeah. What are the things in wider, just like American culture, do you feel like are the big changes that you've seen?
Well, of course, politics, and I'm not going to get into that.
Sure.
But
do you feel like it's more contentious now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's become a totally divided society.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious about something, because you lived through the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
You lived through the Korean War, but Vietnam was probably the most politically contentious of those. Was that even less than what we see now?
I think so, and here's why. I think there was a segment of society in that time that chose to be
very vocal.
Yeah. but that it wasn't a complete 50% of our society like it is now. I mean, it's literally two different sides now. And having lived in the Vietnam War and come back from the Vietnam War and saw what the impact of all of that in my life and what the changes that brought about too, both good and bad. And so, but no, the world was a pretty. I mean, even though I can remember being in junior high school, and this was during the Cold War, and I mean the Cold War was flaming at the time, and we didn't think much about it, and yet about every week you'd have a drill.
Yep.
Climb under your desk.
Everybody, get underneath your desk, if the atom bomb comes off. And so there was always that little bit of tension there as to what was going on in the world, but it was kind of unreal. I mean, as teenagers, of course, nothing's going to really happen.
I don't know what they made desks out of in those days, but they must have been amazing.
Yeah, pull your desk over you. Climb inside.
Save you from anything.
But
so many comments.
All right, but there was that tension in our world, but it wasn't anything like the tension that we see today, and the division of people.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't like that, to be honest.
And I think in some ways, and I did not live through the Vietnam War. Well, I probably did, but I was probably in diapers or something.
2 years of it.
Exactly. Right. But it seems to me that was like a more of a split that was, like you said, black and white, where it seems to me like there's just so much splintering of everything. So you can't be just one way or another. Even when you look at people who are standing up to say, I believe in women's sports, but I don't want transsexuals being in sports or being in sports, or you can't be if you're a Republican, you've got to be far right, or if you're a Democrat, you got to be far left. There's no middle ground.
Right.
And yet, even within those, there's splintering that has taken place. Right. And so, it just seems like there was, to me, from my perspective, there seems like there's a whole lot more factions and splinter groups and that kind of stuff than we ever used to see.
Yeah. That's one of the cultural changes that we are seeing take over our world, really, is the issue of homosexuality and transgender and all of that. And it has become a situation where if you don't go along with how I feel, then you are wrong. And rather than the world trying to live at some level of understanding.
Yeah. It feels like every issue, whether it's sexuality or politics or sports or whatever, like everybody wants you to care very deeply about everything.
Right.
And I find it exhausting.
It is. It is exhausting.
Like I need a nap.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Well, but I think that's, and it's true no matter what. I would think that the culture and the church back when we're talking about in your day was not much different than the culture in the church today, other than in the sense that you said, if you ask somebody if they're a Christian, they go, yeah, because that's just what you were. But in today's day and age, we watch as the culture that even the churches are starting to say, we are going to accept or we are not going to accept certain cultural beliefs or certain cultural norms or whatever. Is that different? Is that different? I mean, I know they're different norms, they're different, but is that so much different than what you dealt with in your younger days?
Absolutely. I mean, I know what the Southern Baptist Convention. I don't even know if I'm alled to talk about this.
You talk about it. You know what? As far as I'm concerned, you're the guest. This is your
that's right.
episode.
We'll talk
But
about
what
anything.
the Southern Baptist Convention has just gone through as to whether women should be allowed to be pastors.
Right.
And that was not an issue. I mean, it just was not an issue in my younger years, and all the way up through not too many years ago that it became an issue. And so on that level, I mean, it was kind of interesting to me that women in the church did all the work, and the men
got all the credit.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
I miss the old days.
Yeah. But those are some. I mean, there are those issues that are so different or so difficult for us to try to get through today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there doesn't have to be anything else in wider culture that really kind of stands out to you as, man, that's monstrous changes.
Well, again, I think the reverence for God.
Yeah.
We just don't see that.
Can I ask, how do you see? Because to me, it's a major culture shift. How's technology changed everything, either in your personal life or how you see?
You're talking to John.
things-
He doesn't have a clue.
Technology. What are you talking about? What's a computer?
I know you still use a flip phone, but
No, I don't. It was interesting to me, and when I first came on staff here, of course, nobody. I mean, it was during the time when cell phones were just starting to be developed. I mean, they were just coming into where everybody had one. And I can remember one day there was 4 of us pastors, and we were in a car, and every one of the pastors was on their phone. Every one of them. And it upset me, because that communication level between interpersonal, maybe that's another thing. Interpersonal communication was going away. It was all becoming technological communication rather than personal communication. And so one day I'm out there, and it really is upsetting me because nobody in the car is talking to each other. They're talking on their phone. And I had a rotary phone at my house, an old rotary phone. And I got into the car the next time and I laid it up on the dashboard of the car, and I acted like I picked up the phone and I was talking on the phone. And I think, I'm trying to get a point across anyway, that can't we just talk to each other? Yeah.
did it work?
No. Obviously, it didn't change a thing. But as I think that is a big change.
Didn't work. He got a phone call. He had to take.
Yeah, right. But that type of personal communication has become something of the past too. And yet, as far as the level of communication that we have a capability of, we are so far ahead of where we could. You think about this blog that we're doing right now, and how many people we could reach with this blog. In the past, it was whoever was your audience.
Yeah, they had to be physically present.
The
moment
be
it
able
was
to
happening.
get the message of what you were trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, and I think COVID really kind of magnified that because people realized I can watch anybody from my home.
Yeah.
And so, if I wanted to watch somebody in Atlanta or in New York or wherever, I could watch them. But it goes back to that idea, you take away the interpersonal reaction that church offers, that ability to step into a room, greet somebody, shake their hand, give them a hug, ask them how are they doing, and be able to look them in the eye.
Right.
I want to look you in the eye, and because immediately I'm going to know, are you just telling me you're fine or are you really okay?
Right.
And I want that ability to go, okay, tell me what's really going on.
Well, there's another cultural change that has taken place, and I think the church has actually driven this. It was the normal thing whenever you ask anybody in the past, how are you doing? The answer was always, oh, I'm doing fine. And now the church has made it okay for people to say, I'm a mess. I'm having a tough time. Things are not going well. And I think the church has done a great job of being able
Yeah,
to
that's a
bring
good
out of
change.
people's lives
Yeah.
to admit, we have problems.
What are some other good changes you think that you've seen in church life? What are some, and you'll get a chance to share ones that you have concerns about, but what are some things like that, like, the freedom to be honest, or to not be okay when you're not okay?
Yeah.
What are some other good things you've seen in church life?
Well, I think the music part. I'm musically driven. I love music, and I think that the music of the gospel groups that have came out, and the Christian music that is out there, has caused us to be able to feel a connection to God that we weren't able to maybe have by singing at the cross or something. I mean, yeah, but I think those changes within the culture, the music changes, have driven so many really, really good things.
Cool.
And the ability for pastors to be able to take the gospel and take the Bible, to be able to bring it into your very life, and to be able to make that something that is meaningful for you. I think, because before it was learning. I mean, you would
I see. Yeah.
you would learn. I mean, you knew scripture, you were taught well on the words of the Bible, but not necessarily how do you take that now and make it a part of your life. And so I think that we've done a good job.
Gotten better at that.
Much better at that, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else that you like in the kind of the new modern version of church?
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, as you can tell, I'm comfortable.
Yeah, that's right.
He is not in a suit and a tie.
Yeah,
he is
not in a suit and a tie at
He just
all.
came
Yeah,
off the golf course, if
right.
that tells you anything.
Well, let's talk about some of the things then that you're concerned about. We talked about reverence, and I share that. I think it feels like a tension. Like, you want familiarity, you want friendship, you want casualness, but you also don't want to lose reverence, and that feels like those things feel like they're in tension. Are there some other concerns that you have about church life?
Yeah, I was running it through my mind again and talking about the music again. I think it's a problem that people cannot accept sometimes when things aren't perfect.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I mean, it was not in my past, it was not perfect by any means. And so that was okay for it not to be perfect. And we lose people all the time over some small issue, like, I didn't like the way that sounded, and so our acceptance, of that has caused people to be a little more critical.
Would you say, and I'm going to take a little bit of a leap,
Okay.
but is that related in your mind to people who want church to be like formatted or presented in a way that's just the way they want it? Like, they want it almost like customized to their preference.
Yes.
And then if it doesn't fit their preference, they're
out. I mean, the church has told them that. I mean, they really have. I mean, the church in whole of today has said, if you don't like this, then go find something you do like. And we've made it acceptable to do that, to leave. Whereas in the past, you belonged at this church, regardless. I mean, it was whatever church you went to was your church. And whether with all of its foibles and problems and everything else, it was still your church. And now people can go wherever, and if they don't find exactly what they're looking for, then they go somewhere else.
Yeah, or just find it online.
Yeah. Or yeah, or just yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's part of? Do you think society has made the change into saying, I don't want to be a member whether no matter what it is. But including that membership, that the idea of formal membership of a church has kind of dropped off. We have lots of people who would say, "This is my church," but they would say, "I've never gone through anything that said I'm a member of this church or I am."
Right.
Has that been a cultural shift, both publicly and in the church world?
Yeah, it's again very two-sided. When we were First Southern Baptist Church back in when I first came on staff here, there were certain things that you could not do. I mean, if you weren't a signed member, if you hadn't gone through the ritual of membership and do what you needed to do, then you were actually exempt of many of the things that you could do, including taking Lord's Supper. At that particular time, it was closed communion. And so if you didn't belong to this church and you weren't a member of this church, then you weren't allowed to do that. And so that was on that side of things. And now we have opened it up to where anybody can come as long as you make it very clear of what the standard is for communion. But on the other, people of whatever, when they came here or come here as a visitor. But no, I think church membership was important in that it caused people to align with something and feel like they were a part of it. And it became a kind of a glue that held us together a little bit. And now you're right, Scott. The whole thing of church membership and all of that has kind of gone by the wayside. And whatever church you attend the most is the church that you belong to.
Well, and I think that there was a generational shift to say, well, the only reason you want me to be a member is so I'll give you money.
Yeah.
And so there'd be people that say, well, I'm a member because I give money, but they don't serve. They don't do anything for the church. And so the church has kind of shifted to say, at least as far as our church goes, we've kind of said to say, if you're giving and if you're serving, that tells us that you have buy-in.
Yeah.
And that's how we determine membership. And so in some ways, it's the same thing. We don't have a formal way, but we look at your actions to say you're a part.
That brought up a real good thought for me as far as some changes in the church. Can't lose this.
Sure, go for it.
It's important. It was the normal thing for the normal member of the church to, if you will, I'm going to use this term, to pass off their responsibility of missions and of trying to reach the world. They would pass that off to somebody who was a paid person to be able to do that. And so we weren't involved, if you will. And the church has become much more a place where people are personally involved in missions.
That's a great thing.
And it is a great thing. That transition was something that we had to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other concerns as you look at the church now? Things that are on your radar for?
People need to know the depth of the Word of God. I think sometimes we make it way too surface. But in learning the depths of the Word of God, I think we need to also understand how it affects our lives. So it's something. It's not just learning for knowledge.
Right.
It's learning so that we would know how we can live our lives better. And I think that is so important in our lives today.
It's a tough balance. And you and I have probably had this conversation more than once in the years we worked together, but I think the church is by and large growing, or has grown more biblically illiterate than it was, 40, 50 years ago. Maybe better at relevance, about application.
Right.
but only in these little like snippets. It's like our attention span got small, and so we do these little, maybe I know this individual story and I can apply it to my life, but I don't know the whole story.
Right.
I don't know the big story.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think finding a way to teach the big story without losing the applicable relevance.
Well, again,
that's the challenge in front of us.
I think it's all about reverence.
Hmm.
I mean, the Word of God is something that is incredibly reverent, and we need to understand this is what God left us, and we have a responsibility to know it as much as we possibly can,
cherish it,
and cherish it.
Yeah.
And I think we've kind of lost that part of the learning of the Word.
So we're going to end each of our podcasts with this question, and I'm really, for as long as you and I serve together, and the heart that I know that you have for ministry and for the church, how can we, from your point of view, how can we effectively speak faith into this current culture?
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to hear from us?
Well, I think we still need it. We need to be able to teach them to get the world to understand that the Bible really is, the Word of God really is something that can affect your life and has answers for them in their daily life. And so we need to be able to be as good at that as we possibly can be, and be able to get that across to people. And God is God. I mean, and Jesus is the one. I mean, getting across to the people of who Jesus is so important in helping them to understand really what Jesus's part was in our lives. I mean, is so important, and we need to be able to do that on a depth and get people to understand that part of really who the Godhead is and what the Bible is to us.
Now, I know you continue to serve at an RV community and continue to pastor there. What are you finding that's effective in that environment? Is it hard to reach? I mean, they're kind of retired. They're
not.
That's awesome.
They really are not. And I thought that might be the case when I first went over there. I thought, well, there's going to be a bunch of people, and they're going to sit out.
They've heard it all.
They've heard it all. They're going to sit out in the pews, and I'm just going to spout what I spout out, and they're going to go on with their lives. And it wasn't that at all.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, I was so, and this is a group of people of all different denominations. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just a single denomination, which kind of concerned me too.
Yeah.
But
are we going to agree on anything?
Yeah, are we exactly? And but it turned out, as long as you stick to the basics of the Bible and try to teach just the basics of the Bible and what that means in the lives of people, they can't really contest it, and they can take it and they can use it in their lives. And it became just that tool. And I think that's been part of my, I use this term, success. Part of my success is that I try to keep it as simple as possible, and yet the importance of what this means in your daily life and how it affects your daily life is crucial. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, John. Thanks for joining us. This has been a great conversation. This 45 minutes went by like that. It did. You get one parting shot if you want it.
One parting shot
that we'll close with.
One parting shot.
If you want it, you don't have to take it.
Yeah. Just keep on keeping on.
All right.
Can I give one parting shot?
You can.
Sorry.
I know that
and
was.
They can
that
edit
was,
this out if they want.
that was filler. You were still thinking I could.
That was the warm up. The warm up shot. Warm up swing.
Yeah, I think the fact that Jesus hasn't come and hasn't returned causes people to have doubt. And I believe that. And we have to help people understand in the reality and the greatness of things, the time between when Jesus walked this earth and now is not that much time. And so I think we need to keep people solid in the fact that Jesus is going to come back, and he is going to take his church, and we are going to be with him forever. And we need to solidify that in the lives of people and continue that in their lives.
All right.
Wow. It's going. It's going. It's gone.
All right. Thank you, John. It's been a great conversation, and I'm looking forward. I can't wait for the next one now. We're going to be doing this for what, 4 or 5 weeks?
Yeah.
5 episodes?
5, at least 5, maybe 6.
All right.
So when I hear this hear this blog, they're going to edit everything I said out.
Yeah, it'll be 45 minutes here, but it'll be about 7.
Right.
Yeah.
I really am looking forward to hear from the boomer generation about what it was like and what the culture looks like now, and how do we have those conversations. I would not be surprised if this also leads us into, I don't know if it's right to call them a Millie generation, millennial, the Millies.
I'm just shaking my head.
But to see, they look back, you look back from a living through history, they look back through a vision of history, of what history has been taught. So I'll be curious if we actually do a millennial version of the similar podcast.
That might be interesting. All right. Well, till next time.
Till next time.